Imagine waking up to see a stranger wearing your wedding dress inside your own house and broadcasting it to millions online. What begins as a petty humiliation quickly spirals into the darkest social media thriller you'll ever hear, filled with stolen identities, deepfake scandals, and even murder trophies hidden inside luxury handbags. Stay with me because every twist in this story is wilder than the last, until the shocking truth finally explodes in a courtroom live stream seen around the world. And if you love gripping stories like this, don't forget to hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, share this with a friend who needs some drama in their life, and of course, subscribe so you don't miss the next jaw-dropping tale. Elizabeth Carter stood in her Hamptons kitchen, watching the sunrise paint golden streaks across the marble countertops. At 42, she had everything society told her to want: the estate with ocean views, the tech CEO husband, the designer wardrobe that could fund a small nonprofit. Yet as she scrolled through her phone that morning, her perfectly manicured world began to crack. "Mom, you need to see this," Emma said, bursting through the kitchen doors. Her 16-year-old daughter's face was pale, her phone extended like evidence of a crime. Elizabeth took the device, squinting at Madison Blake's Instagram story. The 28-year-old influencer stood in Elizabeth's own beach house, the one James claimed he was renovating. But what made Elizabeth's blood turn cold wasn't the location. Madison was wearing Elizabeth's wedding dress, the vintage Vera Wang she'd carefully preserved for Emma. The caption read, "Upgrading my life, one milestone at a time. Some treasures deserve a new beginning." "That's our beach house," Emma whispered. "And your dress, Dad said it was in storage." Elizabeth's hand trembled as she returned the phone. 20 years of marriage reduced to an Instagram story. She thought of her mother, who'd worked 16-hour days in a counterfeit handbag factory, fingers bleeding from cheap leather and harsh chemicals. Her mother had pushed Elizabeth to marry up, to never look back at their working-class roots. Now, standing in her palace of marble and glass, Elizabeth realized she'd become exactly what her mother wanted: a trophy on a shelf, gathering dust. "Where's your father?" Elizabeth asked, her voice steady despite the storm building inside. "His office. Mom, who is Madison Blake?" Elizabeth knew exactly who Madison Blake was. 5 million followers, a closet worth more than most people's homes, and apparently her husband's mistress. She'd seen Madison at charity events, always carrying a different Hermes bag, always photographing her food while it went cold. The kind of woman who viewed life through a camera lens, measuring worth in likes and engagement rates. "Someone who's about to learn that not everything can be stolen," Elizabeth said, straightening her spine. She found James in his home office, 3 monitors glowing with stock tickers and cryptocurrency charts. At 48, he still looked like the Silicon Valley wonder kid who'd swept her off her feet at a fashion show in Milan. But success had hardened his features, turned his charm calculated. "We need to talk about Madison Blake," Elizabeth said. James didn't even look up from his screens. "What about her?" "She's wearing my wedding dress, in our beach house." His fingers paused on the keyboard. For a moment, Elizabeth saw something flicker across his face. Not guilt, but annoyance, like she'd interrupted an important meeting with trivial concerns. "I want a divorce," he said, spinning his chair to face her. "Madison makes me feel alive. You make me feel like I'm living in a museum." The words hit Elizabeth like physical blows, but she refused to stagger. 20 years, James, we have a daughter. Emma will understand. Madison's already offered to mentor her, teach her about building a brand. It's the 21st century, Elizabeth. Everyone needs a brand. Elizabeth laughed, a bitter sound that has surprised them both. "A brand? Is that what our marriage was? Your brand?" "Our marriage was a transaction," James said coldly. "I gave you status, security, a life your mother could only dream of. You gave me, what, dinner parties? Charity galas? Madison understands the digital age. She's an investment in my future." "An investment," Elizabeth repeated. She thought of the anonymous tips she'd been receiving about James's gambling debts, the offshore accounts, the late-night calls from Vegas. "Speaking of investments, how much have you lost this quarter?" 5 million? 10? James's face darkened. "Ace. Victoria will send over the paperwork." I suggest you sign quickly. Madison's already redecorating the beach house. Elizabeth turned to leave, then paused at the door. You know what the difference is between a genuine Hermes and a fake, James? The genuine one holds its value. The fake falls apart the moment you apply pressure. She walked out, not seeing the cold calculation that crossed his face, or the text he sent. Move to phase 2, make it public. That evening, Elizabeth stood before 300 guests at her annual charity gala for domestic abuse survivors. She'd organized this event for 10 years, raising millions for women who needed shelter, legal aid, hope. The ballroom at the St. Regis sparkled with candlelight and diamonds, her white Carolina Herrera gown flowing like liquid moonlight. She was mid-speech about resilience when the ballroom doors burst open. Madison Blake strutted in, her phone held high, live streaming to her millions of followers. She wore a red dress that left little to imagination, her smile sharp as a blade. Sorry to interrupt, Madison called out, her voice carrying across the stunned crowd. But James wanted this handled publicly. Full transparency, right? Elizabeth watched in horror as Madison climbed the stage stairs, her phone capturing every moment. The younger woman handed Elizabeth an envelope with theatrical flair. Divorce papers, Madison announced to her live stream. Sometimes you have to clear out the old to make room for the new. Nothing personal, Elizabeth. Just evolution. As Elizabeth reached for the envelope, Madison stumbled, or appeared to. Her glass of red wine splashed across Elizabeth's white gown, spreading like blood across snow. The crowd gasped. Cameras flashed. Madison's live stream exploded with comments and reactions. Oops, Madison said, not bothering to hide her smirk. Guess that dress is ruined. Don't worry, I know a great vintage shop. They specialize in helping former wives transition. Elizabeth stood there, wine dripping from her gown, 300 pairs of eyes watching her humiliation. But instead of running, she leaned into the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, her voice steady, you've just witnessed what domestic abuse looks like in the digital age. It's not always bruises. Sometimes it's systematic humiliation, financial control, and public degradation. Your donations tonight will help women escape situations exactly like this. The room erupted in applause, but Elizabeth saw Madison's smile widen as she checked her phone. The video already had 2 million views. The hashtag WineWifeDown was trending #1. 3 days after the gala disaster, Elizabeth sat in the Manhattan office of Victoria Hayes, her best friend since college and one of New York's most successful divorce attorneys. The space screamed power. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. Original Basquiat paintings. A desk that cost more than most cars. This is war, Victoria declared, her red nails tapping against her laptop screen. But wars can be won with the right strategy, and James just made a critical error. Elizabeth leaned forward, hope flickering for the first time since the wine incident. Victoria had been her rock through everything. Emma's difficult birth, Elizabeth's father's death, the slow erosion of her marriage. What kind of error? Elizabeth asked. Victoria turned her screen around, showing bank records. James moved $10 million to an offshore account in the Caymans. The transfer date? 1 day before your official separation? That means it's still marital property. He can't hide assets that belong to both of you. 10 million? Elizabeth's mind raced. But James always said we were barely liquid, that everything was tied up in the company. Men lie, Victoria said simply, especially rich men about to leave their wives. But numbers don't. This transaction alone could guarantee you get your fair share. Plus, I found something interesting about Madison Blake. She pulled up Madison's Instagram, scrolling through endless posts of handbags, champagne, and suspiciously similar-looking beach houses across the world. Look at the patterns, Victoria continued. She was in Miami 6 months ago, dating a real estate developer named Harrison. He died in a boating accident. She inherited his South Beach condo. Before that, Phoenix, a dentist named Brian. Heart attack at 35. She got his practice. Elizabeth studied the screen, a chill running down her spine. You think she's... I think she's a professional, Victoria said carefully. Whether that means gold digger or something worse, I'm not sure. But James is clearly her latest target. They spent the next hour building their case. Victoria would file for an emergency freeze on James's assets, demand full financial disclosure, and subpoena Madison's financial records. For the first time in days, Elizabeth felt like she could breathe. "We'll destroy them in court," Victoria promised, squeezing Elizabeth's hand. "Trust me, I've never lost a case like this." Elizabeth left the office feeling stronger. She took Emma shopping at Bergdorf's, letting her daughter pick out a dress for her upcoming Sweet 16. They laughed over frozen hot chocolate at Serendipity, pretending everything was normal, that their life wasn't falling apart in real time on social media. That evening, while Emma was at a friend's house, Elizabeth received an anonymous letter slipped under her apartment door. The handwriting was careful, deliberate. "She's done this before. Check the Hermes authentication database for bags reported stolen between 2019 and 2023. A friend who knows prison walls." Elizabeth's hands shook as she opened her laptop, navigating to the Hermes authentication site. What she found made her stomach turn. 7 bags reported stolen, all from women who had died under suspicious circumstances. Each bag worth between $50,000 and $500,000. Each woman young, wealthy, and without close family. She was reaching for her phone to call Victoria when it rang. Her lawyer's name appeared on the screen. "Victoria, I just found something incredible." "Elizabeth, I need to see you immediately. Don't go to the preliminary hearing tomorrow. Let me handle it." "What? Why?" "Just trust me. Something's come up. I'll explain everything later." But Elizabeth didn't listen. She arrived at the courthouse the next morning, slipping into the back row of the courtroom. She watched Victoria enter, noticed how she avoided eye contact, how she sat rigidly at the plaintiff's table. Then James's lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, we'd like to present evidence of infidelity on Mrs. Carter's part." Elizabeth's blood froze. What evidence? She'd never... The lawyer produced a tablet, swiping through what appeared to be security footage. There was Elizabeth, or someone who looked exactly like her, in compromising positions with her trainer. The timestamp showed dates when Elizabeth knew she'd been at her mother's grave, at Emma's school events, anywhere but where these videos claimed. "These have been forensically verified," James's lawyer continued. "Mrs. Carter has been conducting an affair for 6 months. Elizabeth stood up. "Those are fake. They're deep fakes. I've never..." "Mrs. Carter, please sit down," the judge commanded. "Ms. Hayes, do you have any objection to this evidence?" Elizabeth waited for Victoria to fight, to demand authentication, to do anything. Instead, her best friend stood slowly. "No objection, Your Honor." The words hit Elizabeth like a physical blow. She watched Victoria's shoulders tense, saw her fingers tremble slightly. But her friend, former friend, didn't turn around, didn't meet her eyes. "Based on this evidence," the judge ruled, "I'm denying Mrs. Carter's request for emergency spousal support and asset freeze. The standard financial disclosure timeline will apply." Elizabeth stumbled out of the courthouse, her mind reeling. The deepfakes were perfect, technically flawless. Even she almost believed them. But Victoria's betrayal cut deeper than any video. 20 years of friendship, destroyed for what? Money? A better offer from James? Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Check Victoria's Instagram tonight. You'll understand everything." That evening, Elizabeth watched Victoria's stories with growing nausea. There was her former friend at Madison's penthouse, champagne glasses raised. In the background, Elizabeth spotted something that made her heart stop. Her own Hermes Kelly bag, a 25th anniversary gift from James, sitting on Madison's couch like a trophy. The caption read, "Celebrating new partnerships and new beginnings." Emma came home from school in tears. "Mom, everyone's seen the videos. They're saying They're saying terrible things." Elizabeth held her daughter, feeling the weight of her crumbling world. "Those videos are fake, sweetheart. Technology can make lies look like truth now." "I know they're fake," Emma said, surprising her. "I was with you on those dates, I remember." "But Mom, if they can fake videos that well, how do we prove what's real anymore?" It was a question Elizabeth couldn't answer. In this digital age, truth had become negotiable, reality something that could be edited, filtered, and uploaded for public consumption. The credit card declined at Emma's private school was just the beginning. Elizabeth stood in the administration office of Spence, where her daughter had attended since kindergarten, watching the secretary's face shift from confusion to pity. "I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding," the woman said kindly. "Perhaps try another card." Elizabeth handed over 3 more cards. All declined. Behind her, she heard the whispers of other mothers who'd come to pick up their daughters. She recognized Cynthia Morrison, whose husband ran a hedge fund, and Margaret Collins, whose family owned half of Manhattan's luxury hotels. Former friends who now looked at her like she was contagious. "I'll handle this tomorrow," Elizabeth said with as much dignity as she could muster. There's clearly been an error. But there was no error. James had systematically frozen every joint account, canceled every credit card, and somehow convinced the bank that Elizabeth was under investigation for fraud. By the time she reached the parking lot, her Mercedes was being loaded onto a tow truck. "Ma'am, this vehicle is being repossessed," the driver said, not unkindly. "The lease was terminated this morning." "That's impossible. It's in my name." "The leaseholder listed is JC Enterprises. They called it in an hour ago." Elizabeth stood in the Spence parking lot, watching her car disappear, while Emma's classmates filmed everything on their phones. Within minutes, Madison Blake had reposted the videos with crying, laughing emojis. "From Mercedes to MetroCard," Madison's caption read. "Some downgrades happen fast." The systematic destruction of Elizabeth's life played out like a carefully orchestrated performance. Each day brought new humiliations, each more public than the last. Madison live-streamed herself shopping in Elizabeth's former closet at the Hamptons house, holding up designer dresses and asking her followers if they wanted them. "This vintage Chanel? Boring. This Oscar de la Renta? So 2015. Oh, but this..." Madison held up Elizabeth's mother's wedding dress, carefully preserved for 50 years. "This is actually vintage. But who wants their grandmother's style?" She tossed it into a donation pile with theatrical disgust. The stream had 4 million viewers. But the cruelest blow came through Emma herself. Madison started inviting the teenager to lunches, shopping trips, promising to make her Instagram famous. "She has a photographer who could shoot my sweet 16, Emma told Elizabeth one evening. "She says I have natural influence potential." "Emma, she's trying to manipulate you." "No, Mom, she's trying to help me. At least she doesn't lie about who she is. She owns her ambition. You pretended to be something you weren't for 20 years. "What are you talking about?" Emma pulled up her phone, showing an article Madison had shared. From Factory to Fortune, the Elizabeth Carter story. Someone had dug up Elizabeth's past, complete with photos of her mother's counterfeit handbag workshop, their tiny apartment in Queens, Elizabeth's community college transcripts before she'd transferred to Parsons. "You never told me Grandma made fake bags," Emma said accusingly. "You let me believe we were always this. I was protecting you from what? From knowing who you really are?" Madison says authenticity is everything now. No one wants fake anymore. The irony was so sharp it could cut. Madison Blake, whose entire existence was curated and filtered, preaching authenticity while carrying stolen bags and living under assumed identities. That night, Elizabeth couldn't sleep. She sat in her increasingly empty apartment. James had sent movers to take his furniture, researching Madison Blake obsessively. The woman's digital footprint was extensive but shallow, like a perfectly decorated room with no foundation. Every relationship ended with the man's death or financial ruin. Every city she left held whispers of scandal. At 3 in the morning, she found it, a death certificate for Sophia Pemberton, dated 2019. Sophia had been Madison's roommate in Los Angeles, a pharmaceutical heiress with no living relatives. She died in what was ruled an accidental overdose, leaving everything to Madison in a will signed 3 days before her death. Elizabeth zoomed in on the last photo of Sophia alive, posted on an archived Instagram account. There, on Sophia's arm, was the exact Hermes Himalayan Birkin that Madison now carried everywhere. The bag worth $500,000. The bag Sophia had custom ordered from Paris. Her phone rang, startling her. Unknown number. "Hello? Don't trust Victoria." The voice was male, rough, urgent. "She's been taking money from your husband for years. Check her client files. Sherman divorce, 2020. Blackwood divorce, 2021. Morrison divorce, 2022. See the pattern? Who is this? Someone who knows what Madison Blake is capable of. Someone she destroyed. Meet me tomorrow night. Parking garage at 57th and Lexington. 9th floor. Come alone. The line went dead. Elizabeth spent the next day following the trail the caller had left. Victoria's public case records showed a disturbing pattern. Wealthy wives who'd started with ironclad prenups in evidence of their husband's infidelity, only to lose everything in court. In each case, last-minute evidence had emerged, affairs, addiction, mental instability, that destroyed the wife's credibility. She was so absorbed in her research that she almost missed Emma packing a suitcase. "Where are you going?" "Dad's new apartment. Madison decorated a room just for me. She got me a ring light, a professional camera setup. She's going to help me launch my brand." "Emma, please. You don't understand what she is." "No, Mom, you don't understand what the world is now. It's not about marrying rich and hiding your past. It's about building something yourself. Madison did that. She came from nothing and built an empire." "Built on what, Emma? Dead women's money?" Emma looked at her with something worse than anger, disappointment. "You're jealous, you're bitter, and you're trying to drag everyone down with you. I'll be at Dad's if you need me. But honestly, I hope you figure out your issues before my sweet 16. I don't want this energy at my party." After Emma left, Elizabeth broke down for exactly 5 minutes. Then she wiped her tears, put on her last designer suit, the movers had missed it, and prepared for her meeting with the mysterious caller. The parking garage was empty except for scattered cars belonging to overnight workers. Elizabeth climbed to the 9th floor, her heels echoing in the concrete silence. A figure stepped out from behind a pillar, and Elizabeth's hand went to the pepper spray in her purse. "I'm not here to hurt you," the man said, stepping into the light. He was 35, maybe 40, with the kind of exhausted handsomeness that suggested a difficult life. Prison tattoos peeked out from his collar, but his eyes held intelligence, pain, and something else. Determination. "Marcus Reed," he said. "Madison's ex-husband, though she probably told everyone I'm dead. You're supposed to be in prison." "I was, for a murder I didn't commit. Sophia Pemberton was Madison's crime, not mine. But Madison's good at making evidence appear. Bank transfers from my accounts to drug dealers, my fingerprints on the pill bottles, a suicide note in my handwriting I never wrote." Elizabeth studied him, looking for signs of deception. "Why should I believe you?" Marcus pulled out a tablet, showing her security footage she'd never seen before. Madison entering Sophia's apartment with a key. Madison leaving 3 hours later with 2 suitcases. Madison at an ATM withdrawing cash from Sophia's account while Sophia was supposedly already dead. "This footage was corrupted in the original investigation," Marcus explained. "Took me 5 years to find someone who could recover it. By then I was already convicted. We need to take this to the police." "With what credibility? I'm an ex-con. You're a bitter ex-wife. Madison's a successful influencer engaged to a tech CEO. Who do you think they'll believe?" Elizabeth knew he was right. In this world, narrative mattered more than truth, and Madison controlled the narrative. "So what do we do?" Marcus smiled grimly. "We give Madison what she wants most, attention, the kind she can't control, the kind that ends with handcuffs." Victoria Hayes lived in a pre-war building on the Upper East Side, the kind with a doorman who knew every resident's secrets and an elevator that still required an operator. Elizabeth had been here countless times for wine nights, strategy sessions about difficult cases, celebrations of Victoria's legal victories. Now she stood across the street at midnight, watching her former friend's silhouette move behind silk curtains. Marcus Reed stood beside her, hood pulled up against the November cold. They had spent 3 days planning this, gathering evidence, preparing for what needed to be done. Not violence, something far more devastating in their digital age. Truth. "She's alone," Marcus confirmed, checking his phone. "Madison's Instagram shows her at a club in Miami with your husband." Elizabeth felt nothing at the mention of James. That love had died the moment she'd seen him choose performance over partnership, metrics over marriage. "Let's go," she said. They didn't break in. Elizabeth still had the spare key Victoria had given her years ago, for emergencies. If this wasn't an emergency, nothing was. The apartment was exactly as Elizabeth remembered. Pristine white furniture, law books arranged by color rather than subject, and a new addition, a glass case displaying 7 Hermes bags, each one worth a fortune, each one a trophy of betrayal. Victoria emerged from her bedroom in silk pajamas, wine glass in hand, freezing when she saw them. Elizabeth, what is he doing here? Hello, Victoria. Nice collection you've got there. Elizabeth walked to the glass case, recognizing her own anniversary Kelly bag among the others. Payment for services rendered? Victoria's face cycled through emotions, shock, anger, finally settling on resignation. She sat on her white couch, suddenly looking older than her 44 years. You don't understand, Victoria said quietly. James has connections you can't imagine. Judges, prosecutors, police commissioners. He owns half the city's legal system through shell companies and campaign donations. If I hadn't played along, you would have maintained your integrity, Elizabeth finished. You would have been my friend. Marcus pulled out his phone, starting to record. Tell us about the Sherman divorce. Victoria's hands trembled around her wine glass. Patricia Sherman had evidence her husband was embezzling. I buried it, said it was inadmissible. She lost everything. Her husband paid me $50,000 and that, she pointed to a coral pink Birkin. That was my bonus. In Blackwood? Elizabeth prompted. Same pattern. I'd tank the case, the husband would pay me. Madison would send a bag as a thank you. She called it our little ecosystem. Everyone wins except the women you swore to protect, Elizabeth said. How many, Victoria? How many women did you destroy? 16, Victoria whispered. 16 cases over 3 years. I told myself they'd lose anyway, that James and Madison would just find another lawyer to do it. At least this way I could what? Afford designer bags? Live in this apartment? Tell me, was it worth it? Victoria looked up, tears streaming down her face. No, nothing's worth becoming what I became. But once you're in, there's no way out. Madison has everything documented. Every payment, every betrayal. She owns me. Marcus stopped recording. She owns a lot of people. But her empire is built on murders, not just betrayals. Help us prove it. Victoria stood, walking to her home office. She returned with a banker's box full of files. Everything's here. Financial records, correspondence, even recordings of Madison discussing her previous relationships. She liked to brag after champagne, tell me about the men who died loving her. Elizabeth opened the first file, finding photos of Madison with different men in different cities. Each relationship followed the same pattern: whirlwind romance, quick cohabitation, sudden death, inherited wealth. 7 men in 5 years, all wealthy, all without close families to question the inheritances. There's more, Victoria said, pulling out a red folder. This is the one that will destroy her. Sophia Pemberton wasn't just her victim, she was her best friend. They'd known each other since high school. Madison killed the only person who ever really loved her, all for money and an identity clean enough to attract bigger targets. The folder contained everything: emails between Madison and Sophia, photos of them together spanning years, and most damning, a voice recording from Victoria's phone. Madison's voice filled the room, slurred with champagne. You know what's funny, Vic? Sophia trusted me completely. Even as I handed her the pills, she thought I was helping her sleep. She died thinking I loved her. In a way, I did. She gave me everything: her trust, her money, her life. What's more loving than that? Elizabeth felt sick. Marcus's jaw clenched so tight she could hear his teeth grinding. We need to take this to the FBI, Elizabeth said. The FBI already knows, Victoria said quietly. Agent Riley Morgan has been building a case for 18 months. She reached out to me 6 weeks ago, offered me immunity if I cooperated. I've been feeding her information, but she needs more. She needs Madison to make a mistake, needs her to get overconfident. Elizabeth laughed bitterly. So you've been playing triple agent, betraying me while secretly working with the FBI? I had to maintain my cover. If I'd fought for you in court, Madison would have known something was wrong. Every betrayal had to look real because Madison watches everything. She has your apartment bugged, Elizabeth. Your phones, your computers, everything. The revelation hit Elizabeth like cold water. Every conversation, every moment of breakdown, every plan, Madison had been watching, listening, laughing. Then she knows we're here, Marcus said, moving toward the door. No, Victoria said, this apartment is clean. It's the only place I could ever be myself, could ever drop the act. Even Madison respects the idea of sanctuary. Plus, she's in Miami, thinking she's won. Elizabeth sank into a chair, processing everything. The divorce hearing is in 3 days. Madison will be there, wearing one of her stolen bags like a crown. James will get everything, and I'll be left with nothing. Not nothing, Marcus said. You'll have justice. And sometimes that's worth more than money. Victoria pulled out one more document. There's something else you need to know. James isn't just complicit. He's been helping Madison identify targets. His company's app has a backend that tracks high net worth individuals, particularly women who are isolated or vulnerable. It was supposed to be for marketing purposes, but Madison used it as a hunting ground. How many? Elizabeth asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. At least 20 potentials in their database. Madison was planning to expand, maybe even build a network, turn murder into a scalable business model. The room fell silent as the horror of it sank in. This wasn't just about Elizabeth's divorce anymore. This was about stopping a serial killer who'd weaponized social media and modern technology to hunt women like prey. What do you need me to do? Elizabeth asked. Victoria smiled for the first time since they'd arrived. I need you to lose. Dramatically, publicly. Let Madison think she's completely won. Let her get so comfortable that she brings that Himalayan Birkin to court, the one that belonged to Sophia. Why that bag specifically? Because Judge Patricia Stone will be presiding. And Judge Stone, well, she has her own history with Madison Blake. Her daughter was one of Madison's early victims. Not killed, but destroyed financially, emotionally. Judge Stone has been waiting 3 years for Madison to enter her courtroom. Elizabeth stood, gathering the files. So we're all just pieces in a larger game? No, Marcus said. We're the ones ending the game. Madison's been playing chess while everyone else played checkers. But she forgot one thing. Even queens can be toppled if you coordinate your pieces right. They left Victoria's apartment separately, carrying copies of the evidence. Elizabeth walked through Central Park despite the late hour, thinking about the strange alliance she'd formed. A convicted murderer who wasn't a murderer. A corrupt lawyer who was secretly a double agent. And herself, a trophy wife who turned out to be anything but decorative. Her phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Mom, Madison just posted about finding some old bags in storage. She's donating them to charity. Isn't that nice? Elizabeth looked at the photo. There was Madison, surrounded by Hermes bags, each one belonging to a dead woman. The caption read, clearing out the old to make room for the new. Who wants to bid on these beauties? All proceeds to my new foundation for female empowerment. The audacity was breathtaking. Madison was literally auctioning off her victims' possessions while positioning herself as a feminist philanthropist. Elizabeth texted back, very charitable. See you at the hearing Tuesday. I love you no matter what. Emma didn't respond, but she read the message. That was enough for now. The morning of the final divorce hearing arrived gray and drizzling, Manhattan's sky matching Elizabeth's mood as she dressed in her last remaining suit. She'd sold everything else, jewelry, watches, even her wedding ring, to pay for basic expenses. The irony wasn't lost on her that she looked more like the girl from Queens than the Hamptons' wife she'd been just months ago. Agent Riley Morgan sat in Elizabeth's nearly empty apartment, her FBI badge conspicuous on the kitchen counter. She was 38, sharp-featured, with eyes that had seen too much. Remember, Riley said, today isn't about winning your divorce. It's about giving Madison enough rope to hang herself. We have agents positioned around the courthouse. The moment she implicates herself, we move. And if she doesn't, Elizabeth asked, if she just sits there with her stolen bags and her fake tears and walks away with my life, then we go to plan B. But trust me, Madison Blake can't help herself. Narcissists never can. They need the last word. Final humiliation. It's what makes them vulnerable. Elizabeth thought about all the humiliation she'd endured. The wine-stained dress, the repossessed car, her daughter choosing Madison over her. Each moment had been carefully orchestrated for maximum impact, maximum views. Today, Madison would expect total victory. "What about Emma?" Elizabeth asked. "She'll be there, sitting with James and Madison." Riley's expression softened. "Your daughter is smarter than you think. She came to us 3 weeks ago." "What?" "Emma's been recording everything. Every conversation with Madison, every shopping trip, every promise. She's scared, Elizabeth. She knows something's wrong with Madison, but she's 16. She doesn't know how to get out without endangering you or herself." Elizabeth felt her knees weaken. Her daughter hadn't betrayed her. She'd been protecting her, gathering evidence from the inside. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because Madison's been watching you. Every reaction, every emotion. If you'd known Emma was on your side, it would have shown. Madison reads people like code. She would have seen it." Marcus arrived 20 minutes later, dressed in a suit that had seen better days but carrying himself with quiet dignity. "Madison's already at the courthouse," he reported. "Posted a story about closing old chapters. She's wearing the Himalayan." "The murder weapon," Elizabeth said grimly, hiding in plain sight. They drove to the courthouse separately, maintaining the illusion of isolation that Madison needed to see. Elizabeth entered through the main entrance, where photographers waited. Madison had made sure they'd be there. The questions came like bullets. "Elizabeth, how does it feel to lose everything?" "Any comment on Madison's engagement to James?" "Is it true you had multiple affairs?" Elizabeth walked through them, silent, dignified, broken, exactly what Madison expected to see. The courtroom was packed. Madison's influence had turned divorce proceedings into spectator sport. Elizabeth saw fashion bloggers, gossip columnists, and countless phones ready to capture her final defeat. Madison sat at James's table, the Himalayan Birkin placed prominently beside her like a $500,000 middle finger. She wore white, bridal white, with diamonds that caught the light like tears. James sat beside her in a Tom Ford suit, not even pretending to hide his satisfaction. Emma was in the gallery's front row, her face unreadable. She didn't look at Elizabeth, which hurt more than any betrayal could. Judge Patricia Stone entered, and the room fell silent. At 55, she commanded respect without trying, her presence filling the space like gravity. She looked at the Birkin bag for a long moment before calling court to order. James's lawyer went first, laying out the case with practiced efficiency. Elizabeth's infidelity, supported by the deep-faked videos. Her mental instability, supported by her paranoid claims about Madison. Her financial irresponsibility, evidenced by her mother's working-class background and gold-digging tendencies. Each lie was presented as fact, supported by doctored evidence and paid testimonies. Elizabeth sat through it all, playing the broken woman perfectly. Then came her turn. She stood, acting as her own representation since Victoria had withdrawn. "Your Honor," Elizabeth began, her voice small, defeated, "I don't have evidence to counter these claims. I don't have high-powered lawyers or digital proof. All I have is the truth, which seems worth very little these days." Madison smirked, pulling out her phone to live stream despite court rules against it. Judge Stone said nothing, letting her continue. "I've been married for 20 years, Elizabeth had continued. I gave James everything, my youth, my career, my identity. I became what he wanted, lived how he demanded. And when someone younger came along, someone who understood his new world better, I became disposable." "Objection," James's lawyer called out. "Relevance?" "Overruled," Judge Stone said quietly. "Continue, Mrs. Carter." "I look at Miss Blake, and I see everything I'm not. Young, digital savvy, unencumbered by history or loyalty. She carries beautiful bags worth more than most people's homes. She builds her life for public consumption, every moment curated for maximum impact." Madison preened at what she took as compliments. The Himalayan Birkin sat beside her like Exhibit A in the case for her superiority. "But I wonder," Elizabeth said, looking directly at Madison, "what happens when the cameras turn off? When the filters can't hide the truth anymore? When those beautiful bags are revealed to be carrying terrible secrets?" Madison's smile flickered slightly. She gripped her phone tighter. Judge Stone leaned forward. "Miss Blake, That's quite an extraordinary bag. A Himalayan Birkin, if I'm not mistaken. Madison brightened, always ready to talk about her accessories. Yes, Your Honor, it's one of my most prized possessions. May I examine it? I'm something of a collector myself. Madison hesitated, but refusing a judge would look suspicious. She handed over the bag with obvious reluctance. Judge Stone examined it carefully, running her fingers along the crocodile skin, checking the hardware, opening the clasps with practiced ease. Tell me, Miss Blake, Judge Stone said conversationally, this particular bag has a fascinating provenance. The Himalayan Birkin is so rare that Hermes keeps detailed records of every one made. This one, for instance, serial number ending in 4793, was commissioned by someone very specific. Can you tell me who? Madison's face went pale. It was a gift. From whom? A friend. Which friend? Madison glanced at her phone as if seeking escape through the screen. Her live stream was still running, thousands of viewers watching her discomfort in real time. I don't remember exactly, You don't remember who gave you a $500,000 bag? Judge Stone's voice hardened. That's strange, because according to Hermes records, this bag was custom ordered by Sophia Pemberton in January of 2019. She posted about it extensively on her social media. She even named it, called it her baby. Miss Pemberton died in March of 2019. So I ask again, how did you come to possess her bag? The courtroom was dead silent. Even the photographers had stopped shooting, sensing something bigger than divorce proceedings happening. Madison's mask finally cracked. She gave it to me before she died. We were best friends. Best friends, Judge Stone repeated. And she gave you a bag worth $500,000. What else did she give you? I don't have to answer that, Madison said, her voice rising. This isn't relevant to the divorce. On the contrary, Judge Stone said, it's entirely relevant. Mrs. Carter has suggested you're not who you appear to be, that you've built your wealth on something other than influence and marketing. If you've received large gifts that might constitute marital assets, they're not marital assets, Madison snapped. I earned everything I have, every body, bosh, bummy, every bag, every dollar, every follower. These women, they gave me things because they wanted to, because I made them feel special before they died. The admission hung in the air like a confession. Before they died, Judge Stone repeated slowly. Women, plural. How many women gave you gifts before they died, Miss Blake? Madison realized her mistake. Her phone shook in her hand, the live stream capturing every moment of her unraveling. I want a lawyer. This isn't a criminal proceeding, Miss Blake. You're not under arrest. You're simply a witness in a divorce case. But tell me, besides Sophia Pemberton, who else gave you Hermes bags before they died? Elizabeth stood. Your Honor, may I? Judge Stone nodded. Elizabeth pulled out her phone, showing photos she'd found in her research. Catherine Whitmore, deceased 2020. She owned this Kelly bag, now in Miss Blake's collection. Catherine Brooks, deceased 2021. She had this Constance bag, also now owned by Miss Blake. Ashley Hamilton, Rebecca Montgomery, Laura Fitzgerald, Diane Rothschild, all dead, all their bags now in Madison Blake's possession. Madison stood abruptly. This is harassment. James, do something. But James had moved away from her, his face showing the calculation of a man realizing he'd backed the wrong horse. I don't know anything about this, he said quickly. You knew everything, Madison screamed. You helped me. You gave me their names from your app, told me which ones were vulnerable, which ones had no family to ask questions. The courtroom erupted. Madison realized what she'd said, tried to take it back, but her own live stream had captured every word. 47,000 viewers had just heard her confession. FBI agents entered the courtroom. They'd been waiting in the hallway, watching the feed like everyone else. Agent Riley Morgan approached Madison slowly, professionally. Madison Blake, also known as Amy Watkins, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and identity theft. As the handcuffs clicked around Madison's wrist, she looked at Elizabeth with pure hatred. You did this? You planned this? Elizabeth shook her head. I didn't plan anything. I just told the truth. It's something you might want to try, though I doubt you'd recognize it anymore. The arrest video went viral before Madison even reached the courthouse doors. 47,000 live viewers became 5 million within an hour. By evening, hashtag Birkin Killer was trending worldwide, and every major news outlet had picked up the story. Elizabeth sat in a small conference room with Agent Riley Morgan, watching the digital empire Madison had built collapse in real time. Instagram suspended her account. Brands rushed to distance themselves. The carefully curated image shattered like a mirror, revealing the monster beneath. "We've frozen all her assets," Riley explained, including the 7 million she inherited from her victims. "It'll be returned to their rightful heirs once we locate them." "And James?" Elizabeth asked. "Your husband is trying to claim ignorance, but Madison's confession implicates him directly. His app was designed to identify vulnerable targets. We have emails, encrypted messages, financial transfers linking him to at least 3 murders." Through the window, Elizabeth could see Emma in the hallway, still in the designer outfit Madison had bought her, looking lost. Riley noticed her attention. "Your daughter's been incredibly brave," the agent said. "The recording she made gave us crucial evidence. Madison trusted her completely, told her things she'd never tell anyone else. How to fake grief at funerals, how to forge signatures, how to make murder look like suicide. She told a 16-year-old girl how to kill people. She was grooming her. Emma was supposed to be her protege, the next generation. Madison saw potential in her, young, beautiful, from a good family. Everything Madison had to fake, Emma had naturally. The door opened, and Victoria Hayes entered, escorted by an FBI agent. She looked smaller somehow, her designer armor unable to protect her from the weight of her choices. "Elizabeth," she began. "Don't," Elizabeth said. "Just don't." "I need you to know something," Victoria pressed on. "The immunity deal. I asked for you to be protected. Everything I gave the FBI, every piece of evidence, it was to save you. I knew I was lost the moment I took that first bribe. But you deserve better. I deserved a friend who wouldn't sell me out for handbags and money." Victoria nodded, accepting the judgment. "The FBI has my client files. 16 women I betrayed. I'm going to personally contact each one, admit what I did, help them appeal their cases. It won't undo the damage, but maybe you'll feel better about yourself." Elizabeth stood. "Those women lost their children, their homes, their futures because you chose designer bags over integrity. There's no maybe about it, Victoria. You're a criminal who got lucky with an immunity deal." Victoria left without another word. Through the window, Elizabeth saw her former friend walk past Emma, who turned away in disgust. At least her daughter could still recognize right from wrong, even after Madison's influence. Marcus Reed appeared in the doorway. "They're releasing Madison's phone to the media. Every text, every email, every private message. She documented everything, thinking she was building a memoir. Turns out she was writing her own conviction." The digital forensics were damning. Madison had photographed herself with each victim's belongings, creating a grotesque catalog of trophies. She'd kept voice memos discussing her plans, convinced they were brilliant insights for the book she'd planned to write about female empowerment through strategic relationships. One recording stood out. Madison's voice, confident and cold. "The key is to make them love you completely. Once someone loves you, they'll forgive anything, excuse everything, right until the moment you hand them the pills. Love is the ultimate vulnerability. That's why I'll never feel it myself." Emma entered the room, mascara streaked down her cheeks. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I thought I believed her. She made everything sound so logical, so modern, like you were just jealous of her success." Elizabeth pulled her daughter into a hug. "You were 16 and manipulated by a master. You also had the courage to record her, to gather evidence. You saved lives, Emma. The women on that target list, they're alive because of you." "She showed me the list," Emma whispered. 23 names. Women whose husbands had died or left, who had money but no support system. She called them opportunities. The revelations kept coming. Madison's real identity, Amy Watkins, had a history going back to high school. She'd been accused of poisoning a teacher but never charged. Her first boyfriend had died in a suspicious accident. Her own mother had died when Amy was 19, leaving a small insurance policy that funded her transformation into Madison Blake. She killed her own mother, Elizabeth asked, reading the file Riley handed her. We can't prove it, but the pattern fits. Elderly woman, isolated, sudden illness, cremated quickly. Amy Watkins disappeared right after, and Madison Blake emerged in Los Angeles with a new face, new name, and seed money for her influencer career. The scope of Madison's crimes was staggering. Beyond the murders, there were dozens of smaller cons, sugar daddies who'd been drugged and robbed, business partners who'd lost everything in suspicious deals, friends who'd had their identities stolen for credit cards and loans. James's arrest happened at JFK as he tried to board a private jet to Switzerland. Someone filmed him being handcuffed at the gate, his protest drowned out by passenger applause. His tech company's stock plummeted. The board voted him out within hours. Your husband was laundering money through his company, Riley explained. Every inheritance Madison collected was cleaned through fake marketing contracts and influencer deals. He took 30%. They were building an empire on corpses. Elizabeth thought about the man she'd married 20 years ago, ambitious but seemingly honest, driven but ostensibly ethical. When had he become this? Or had he always been capable of such darkness, waiting for someone like Madison to give him permission? Her phone rang, an unknown number. Hello? Elizabeth Carter? The voice was female, nervous. My name is Grace Whitmore. Catherine Whitmore was my sister. I just saw the news about her bag, about Madison Blake. Is it true? Did that woman kill my sister? Elizabeth looked at Riley, who nodded. Yes, I believe she did. I'm so sorry. Kate was so trusting, Grace continued through tears. She met Madison at a charity event, thought she'd found a real friend. Then suddenly she was dead, and this woman she'd known for 3 months inherited everything. We couldn't prove anything, but we knew something was wrong. More calls came, siblings, cousins, friends of victims, all with similar stories. Madison had been a shadow moving through their lives, leaving death and theft in her wake. Each caller had suspected, but couldn't prove, had grieved while watching Madison post photos with their loved ones' belongings. By nightfall, Madison's empire had completely crumbled. Her Miami apartment was raided, revealing more trophies, jewelry, artwork, even diary pages from victims. She'd kept everything, unable to let go of her conquests. Emma showed Elizabeth the final Instagram story Madison had managed to post before her arrest, a selfie from the police car, defiant and smiling, with the caption, "The real crime is being extraordinary in a mediocre world." She still doesn't get it, Emma said. She thinks she's the victim. Narcissists always do, Elizabeth replied. In her mind, she'll always be the hero of her own story. Everyone else just props in her performance. That night, Elizabeth and Emma stayed in a hotel, their apartment still bugged and feeling tainted. They ordered room service and watched old movies, avoiding the news despite their phones buzzing constantly with interview requests. What happens now, Emma asked. Now we rebuild. Without the lies, without the pretense, just us. Dad's going to prison, isn't he? Yes. Emma was quiet for a moment. I loved him, but I think I loved the idea of him more than the reality. Does that make sense? Elizabeth thought of her own marriage, 2 decades of projection and performance. Perfect sense. 3 weeks after the arrest, Elizabeth stood in the empty Hamptons house, cardboard boxes at her feet. The divorce had been fast-tracked given James's arrest, and she'd been awarded all marital assets. Not that there was much left after the FBI seizures and debt payments. She found their wedding album in James's study, abandoned like everything else he'd once claimed to value. Photo after photo of smiling strangers, playing roles they'd assigned themselves. The beach ceremony, her mother crying with joy that her daughter had made it. James's tech friends making jokes about upgrading to the latest model. Mom, Monsieur, Emma called from the doorway. There's someone here to see you. Elizabeth expected another FBI agent, or perhaps a reporter who'd somehow gotten past security. Instead, she found Judge Patricia Stone standing in the living room studying the ocean view. Your Honor, Elizabeth said, surprised. I didn't expect... Patricia, the judge corrected. I'm not here officially. I wanted to thank you. For what? Patricia turned from the window, and Elizabeth saw the pain she'd hidden so well in court. My daughter Melissa was one of Madison's first victims. Not killed, thank God, but destroyed. Madison convinced her to invest everything in a fake company, then disappeared with $200,000. Melissa attempted suicide. She survived, but she's never been the same. I'm so sorry. I've waited 3 years for Madison Blake to make a mistake, to enter my courtroom. When I saw she was involved in your divorce, I made sure to get the case. I knew if I pushed the right buttons, asked the right questions, her narcissism would make her confess. Elizabeth sat down, processing this. So we were all working toward the same goal without knowing it. Justice has many architects, Patricia said. Sometimes they work separately on the same blueprint. They talked for an hour about the upcoming trial, about their daughters, about the price of ambition in a world that rewards performance over authenticity. Patricia revealed that she had been collecting Hermes bags for decades, studying them, learning their stories. Every authentic bag has a story, she said. The craftsman who made it, the atelier it came from, the client who ordered it. Madison never understood that. She saw them as trophies, not histories. That's how I knew she'd stolen them. She couldn't tell their stories. After Patricia left, Elizabeth continued packing. She found things she'd forgotten existed. Her portfolio from her fashion buying days, photographs from before James, books she'd loved but hidden because they didn't fit the Hamptons' wife image. Marcus called as she was taping up the last box. Madison's trying to make a deal. She wants to testify against James in exchange for a reduced sentence. Will they accept? Probably not. They have enough evidence on both of them, but she's desperate. Her lawyer says she's been writing constantly in jail, some kind of manifesto about how society forced her to kill, how capitalism and Instagram created her. Elizabeth laughed bitterly. Of course she's the victim in her own story. There's something else, Marcus said. I'm being called as a witness. They want me to testify about Sophia, about our marriage, about how Madison operated. Are you ready for all of that to become public? Elizabeth thought about the months of humiliation she'd already endured, the wine-stained dress, the repossessed car, the public betrayal. What was one more performance? I'm ready, she said. The truth can't be worse than the fiction we've been living. That evening, Emma helped her move into their new apartment, a 2-bedroom in Brooklyn, a far cry from their previous life but somehow more honest. They hung Elizabeth's mother's photograph in the living room, no longer hidden in shame. Grandma would have hated Madison, Emma said, studying the picture. Why do you think that? Because Madison was everything Grandma feared, someone who'd destroy others to climb higher. Grandma made fake bags, but she never pretended they were real. Madison made her whole life fake and insisted it was authentic. The insight was profound from a 16-year-old, but then Emma had aged years in the past months. She'd deleted her Instagram, started therapy, begun writing in a journal with actual pages instead of digital posts. Victoria called that night the first time since her confession. Elizabeth almost didn't answer. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Victoria said immediately. I just wanted you to know I'm leaving law. I'm selling everything, using the money to create a fund for the women I betrayed. It won't undo what I did, but maybe it'll help them rebuild. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve the truth from the beginning, and because I wanted you to know that watching you fight, watching you refuse to break, it reminded me who I used to be, who I wanted to be before I got lost in designer bags and billable hours. Elizabeth hung up without responding. Some bridges, once burned, couldn't be rebuilt with good intentions. The trial date was set for spring, giving the prosecution time to build their cases. Madison was charged with 7 counts of murder, James with conspiracy and money laundering. The media called it the trial of the century, a perfect storm of social media, fashion, and murder. Elizabeth was asked to write a book, to sell her story for a movie, to become an influencer herself fighting against influencer culture. She declined everything. The story wasn't hers alone. It belonged to Sophia Pemberton, to Catherine Whitmore, to all the women whose lives had been stolen for Madison's performance. Instead, she took a job at a small fashion house in Brooklyn, using her old buying experience. The pay was modest, the work unglamorous, but it was real. No one there knew about the Hamptons or the Birkin bags or the viral videos. She was just Elizabeth, good at her job, rebuilding her life one honest day at a time. Emma threw herself into school, her grades recovering from the Madison months. She joined the debate team, arguing passionately about digital privacy and the dangers of social media. Her sweet 16 came and went with just a small dinner party, no photographers, no influencers, no performance. Do you miss it? Emma asked one night as they watched TV in their small living room. The big house, the fancy parties, all of it, Elizabeth thought carefully. I miss feeling secure. I miss not worrying about money. But I don't miss the performance. I don't miss pretending to be someone I wasn't. Dad called from jail, Emma said quietly. He wants me to visit. That's your choice. Would you, if it were your father? Elizabeth thought of her own father, dead 10 years, an FBI agent who'd valued truth above all else. I don't know. James is your father, but he's also someone who helped kill 7 women for money. You have to decide if you can separate those two things. Madison asked me to visit too, through her lawyer. Absolutely not, Elizabeth said firmly. She's dangerous, Emma. Even in jail, she's dangerous. She's a master manipulator who sees you as an unfinished project. Emma nodded. I know. I just wanted to ask her why. Why she chose us. Why she decided to destroy our family. Because we were there, Elizabeth said simply. Because James was weak and wealthy. Because I was in her way. Because you were young and moldable. Predators don't need complex reasons. They just need opportunity. The call came at 3 in the morning, 2 months before the trial. Elizabeth fumbled for her phone, seeing Riley Morgan's number. Madison's dead, Riley said without preamble. Elizabeth sat up, instantly awake. What? How? Apparent suicide, hanging. But Elizabeth, she left something for you. Within an hour, Elizabeth was at FBI headquarters. Emma left sleeping in their Brooklyn apartment. Riley led her to a small viewing room where a laptop waited. She recorded this yesterday, Riley explained. Gave it to her lawyer with instructions to release it if anything happened to her. We've watched it. You need to see it before it potentially becomes evidence. Elizabeth hit play. Madison appeared on screen, still beautiful despite the orange jumpsuit, still perfectly composed despite being in jail. Hello, Elizabeth? Madison began, her voice carrying that familiar condescension. If you're watching this, I'm dead. But here's the thing about death. It's just another transition, another upgrade, and I've left you a gift. Elizabeth felt her skin crawl. Even from beyond the grave, Madison was performing. You think you know everything, Madison continued. 7 murders, the bags, the money. But you don't know the best part. There's an 8th victim, one nobody's found yet. She's been dead for 6 months, buried in a place you'd never think to look. Want to know who? The video paused dramatically. Madison savoring her final moment of control. Your mother-in-law, James's dear mother, Patricia Carter. Remember when she died suddenly in her sleep last year? Natural causes, everyone said. 70-year-old woman, heart problems. Except I helped her along with a little something in her nightly tea. James asked me to. She was going to change her will, leave everything to charity instead of him. Elizabeth's hand flew to her mouth. Patricia Carter had been difficult but harmless, a society matron who'd never approved of Elizabeth, but had loved Emma fiercely. James watched me do it, Madison continued. He held his own mother's hand while I poisoned her tea. He whispered that he loved her while she died. Now that's commitment to the game. Your husband isn't just a co-conspirator, Elizabeth. He's a matricide. And I have video. The screen shifted to grainy footage from what looked like a hidden camera. There was James's mother in her bedroom, James beside her, and Madison preparing tea in the corner. The old woman drank, smiled at her son, and slowly fell asleep. She never woke up. I kept this as insurance, Madison's voice returned, but since I won't need it where I'm going, consider it my final gift. The man you married who fathered your child killed his own mother for money. Sweet dreams, Elizabeth. The video ended. Elizabeth ran to the bathroom and vomited, her body rejecting the horror of what she'd seen. Riley waited outside, patient and professional. We've confirmed the authenticity, Riley said when Elizabeth emerged. We're exhuming Patricia Carter's body today. If Madison's telling the truth, she is, Elizabeth said with terrible certainty. She wouldn't lie in her final performance. This was her encore. There's more, Riley said carefully. We found Madison's real journals in a storage unit. Not the performative ones she kept for her potential memoir, but her actual thoughts. Elizabeth, she was planning to kill you. Riley handed her photocopied pages covered in Madison's neat handwriting. Elizabeth Carter, the ultimate conquest. Not for her money, James already has that, but for her authenticity. She's everything I pretend to be. Actually refined, actually educated, actually loved. When I take her place completely, when Emma calls me mom, when I'm sleeping in her bed and wearing her life, then I'll have won. The bags were practice. Elizabeth is the real prize. Elizabeth read entry after entry, each more disturbing than the last. Madison had been studying her for years, long before James. She'd chosen James specifically because he was Elizabeth's husband. Every move had been calculated to not just steal Elizabeth's life, but to erase her entirely. She was obsessed with you, Riley said. You represented everything she couldn't actually become, only imitate. In her mind, killing you would have been the ultimate transformation. Elizabeth thought about all the times Madison had been in her home, touching her things, studying her mannerisms. It hadn't been about James at all. He'd been a tool, a means to get close to her real target. Does Emma need to know this? That's your decision. But there's one more thing. Riley pulled out another file. Madison had a sister, Amy Watkins, had a younger sister named Sarah. She disappeared 5 years ago around the time Madison emerged. We think Madison killed her too, or she became her. We're not sure Madison Blake was entirely Amy Watkins. She might have been combining identities even then, taking pieces of everyone she destroyed. The implications were staggering. Madison hadn't just been a killer, she'd been something worse, a creature that consumed entire identities, wearing them like the designer clothes she'd collected. Elizabeth went home to find Emma awake, watching the news of Madison's death on her laptop. Is it true? Emma asked. Is she really dead? Yes. Good, Emma said flatly. Does that make me a bad person? It makes you human. They held each other as the sun rose over Brooklyn, neither mentioning the relief they both felt. The boogeyman was dead, even if her shadows remained. Marcus called an hour later. Did you see the video? Yes. There's something else, something the FBI doesn't know yet. His voice was strained. I found Sarah Watkins, Madison's sister. She's alive, Elizabeth. She's been in a psychiatric facility for 5 years, committed the day after Madison emerged. I think Madison put her there, stole her identity along with Amy's, created this hybrid person. My God. I'm going to see her today. She might have answers about who Madison really was, where she came from, what made her into this. Elizabeth wanted to say, don't go, leave it alone, let the dead bury the dead. But she understood the need for answers, for closure. Be careful, she said instead. The news of Madison's death created a media frenzy. True crime podcasters dissected every aspect of her life. Instagram influencers posted about the dangers of social media culture. Fashion magazines ran retrospectives on the Birkin murders. Everyone had an opinion, a hot take, a way to monetize the tragedy. Elizabeth refused all interviews. She owed the victim's family silence, dignity, space to grieve without becoming content. But the world wouldn't leave her alone. Photographers camped outside their building. Emma couldn't go to school without being mobbed. Their new life was becoming another performance, another cage. That's when Judge Patricia Stone called with an unexpected offer. I have a friend in witness protection, she said. Not official, but private. Someplace you and Emma can go until the trial, maybe longer if needed. New names, new lives, completely fresh start. Elizabeth looked at Emma doing homework at their small kitchen table, trying to be normal while the world made them infamous. We'll take it, she said. 3 days before they were scheduled to disappear into their new lives, Marcus Reed arrived at Elizabeth's apartment with Sarah Watkins. The woman was 28, the same age as Madison had claimed to be, but looked decades older. Psychiatric medication and institutional living had left their marks, but her eyes were alert, intelligent, and deeply sad. You're Elizabeth, Sarah said, her voice soft. Amy talked about you all the time when she'd visit. Said you were her final project. Elizabeth led them inside. Emma staying in her room at Elizabeth's insistence. Some truths weren't meant for 16-year-old ears. "Tell me about Amy," Elizabeth said. "The real Amy." Sarah laughed, a broken sound. "There was no real Amy, not for years. She started changing when our mother got sick. Became obsessed with being someone else, anyone else. She'd practice different voices, different walks, different personalities. I'd wake up and not know which version of my sister I'd meet." When did Madison emerge? Madison was one of many. There was Sophia first. She practiced being her best friend for months before she killed her. Then Victoria, then Catherine. She didn't just take their things, she took their mannerisms, their speech patterns, their memories. By the time she had me committed, she was 7 different people living in one body. Marcus leaned forward. "Why did she have you committed?" "Because I was the only one who knew the original Amy. I could see through all her performances, to the frightened little girl who watched our mother die in poverty. She couldn't kill me. I was her anchor to reality. So she had me declared insane, locked away where no one would believe me." "The psychiatric facility believed her?" Elizabeth asked. "She was very convincing. Had documents showing I'd threatened her, attacked her, all fabricated but perfectly done. She'd learned to forge everything, signatures, medical records, entire histories. Plus by then she was already Madison Blake, successful influencer. Who'd believe the crazy sister over her?" They talked for hours, Sarah revealing the depths of her sister's pathology. Amy had started with small thefts, identities borrowed for credit cards, stories stolen from strangers. But each successful deception had made her hungrier for more complete transformations. She called it collecting lives, Sarah explained. Like some people collect stamps or coins, she collected entire existences. "The bags?" Elizabeth asked. "Trophies, but also talismans. She believed they held the essence of their previous owners. She'd sit with them for hours, talking to them like they were the dead women. I think toward the end, she couldn't distinguish between the people she'd killed and the people she'd become." Sarah pulled out a small notebook, worn and hidden. "I kept this. Amy's first journal from when she was 15, before the performances started. I thought if I ever got out, it might help people understand." Elizabeth read the teenage handwriting, seeing the seeds of the monster Madison would become. "Watched a rich girl at school today. Michelle Pemberton. She complains about her parents, her car, her clothes. Doesn't know how lucky she is. I could be her better than she is herself. I practice her laugh in the mirror. Soon I'll be perfect at it." "Michelle Pemberton," Elizabeth said. "Any relation to—" "Sophia's cousin," Sarah confirmed. "Amy targeted that family for years, studied them, stalked them, finally befriended Sophia to get inside. Everything was planned decades in advance." Marcus had been quiet, but now he spoke. "In her suicide note, Madison claimed there were more victims, bodies we haven't found." Sarah nodded slowly. "At least 12 more. She kept a list in code. I can translate it if you want, but those families, they've grieved already. Would knowing she murdered their loved ones help or hurt?" It was an impossible question. Elizabeth thought of Patricia Carter, James's mother, now being exhumed for evidence. Would knowing she was murdered bring peace or more pain? "The families deserve the truth," Elizabeth said finally, "even if it hurts." Sarah spent the next hour writing out names, dates, locations. Each entry was another life stolen, another identity absorbed. By the end, the count was 21 victims over 15 years. She would have kept going, Sarah said. She couldn't stop. Each kill made her feel more real, more substantial. She was trying to fill an emptiness that could never be filled. "What created that emptiness?" Marcus asked. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "Our father killed himself when Amy was 7. Jumped off a building in front of her. She saw him fall, saw him hit the ground. After that, she couldn't trust that anyone was real, that anyone would stay. So she started taking pieces of people, trying to build something permanent out of fragments." The room fell silent, the weight of generational trauma heavy in the air. Elizabeth thought of her own mother, working herself to death to give her daughter a better life. How different choices, different traumas, created different monsters. "There's one more thing," Sarah said, pulling out a flash drive. "Amy's final project. She was creating an AI of herself, feeding it all her videos, posts, writings. She wanted to live forever online, keep influencing even after death. This is the only copy of the code. Elizabeth took the drive, feeling its weight despite its tiny size. Madison's digital ghost, waiting to be resurrected. What will you do with it? Sarah asked. Destroy it, Elizabeth said without hesitation. Some things should stay dead. They burned the drive together in Elizabeth's kitchen sink, watching the plastic melt and ensuring Madison's final performance would never play. After Marcus and Sarah left, Elizabeth found Emma in her room, headphones on but no music playing. She'd been listening to everything. 21 people, Emma said numbly. She killed 21 people. Yes, and Dad helped with at least 2 of them, his own mother. Elizabeth sat beside her daughter. Yes. How do I live with that? How do I exist knowing I came from someone capable of that? It was the question Elizabeth had been dreading. You're not your father. You're not your bloodline. You're the choices you make, the person you decide to be. Madison thought identity could be stolen, worn, discarded. But real identity comes from within, from your actions and decisions. I almost became her, Emma whispered. I was so close to being her protege, her successor. But you didn't. You chose to record her, to gather evidence, to protect others. That's who you are, someone who does the right thing even when it's dangerous. They held each other as night fell over Brooklyn, their last night before becoming new people. Tomorrow they'd leave for somewhere Madison's shadow couldn't reach, where the name Carter meant nothing, where they could build authentic lives without performance. Will we ever come back? Emma asked. After the trial, after James is sentenced, after the world forgets. The internet never forgets. Elizabeth thought of all the videos, the posts, the digital detritus of their public humiliation. Emma was right. They'd exist forever in the cloud, permanent reminders of the worst period of their lives. Then we'll have to live louder than the echoes, Elizabeth said. That night, she couldn't sleep. She stood at the window watching Brooklyn sleep, thinking about the strange journey from Hampton's wife to witness protection candidate. Her phone, which would be destroyed tomorrow, buzzed with one final message from an unknown number. Check the news, Riley. Elizabeth turned on the television to find breaking news. James Carter found dead in his cell, apparent suicide, a note confessing to everything. His mother's murder, his conspiracy with Madison, and 12 other victims they hadn't known about. He'd kept his own trophies, it turned out. Not bags, but watches. Each victim's timepiece stored in a Manhattan safety deposit box like frozen moments. Elizabeth felt nothing. Not relief, not sadness, not even surprise. James had always been a coward, and facing life in prison for matricide was beyond his capacity. He'd chosen Madison's exit, leaving Emma truly orphaned. She went to Emma's room, found her daughter already awake, phone in hand. I know, Emma said simply. Everyone's texting me. How do you feel? Emma considered. Free? Is that terrible? I feel free. 6 months later, the coffee shop in Portland, Oregon was nothing special. Exposed brick, local art, the obligatory succulent in the window. Elizabeth, now going by Grace, worked the morning shift while Emma, now Sarah, finished her senior year at a small private school where no one knew about Instagram or designer bags or the Birkin murders. It had been Judge Patricia Stone's connection that brought them here, a friend who ran a witness protection adjacent program for people fleeing dangerous fame rather than dangerous people. They had new names, new histories, new lives built on foundations of truth rather than performance. Elizabeth was wiping down tables when the bell chimed and Riley Morgan walked in, looking out of place in her FBI windbreaker among the Portland hipsters. The trial's over, Riley said without preamble. I thought you should hear the verdicts in person. They sat in a corner booth while Emma's school day continued, safe in her anonymity. Victoria Hayes got 5 years for conspiracy and fraud. She'll be disbarred, obviously. She's already paid restitution to all the women she betrayed. Good. Madison's posthumous trial was complicated. She was found guilty on all counts, but there's been debate about what to do with her remaining assets. The victims' families are fighting over everything. Let them have it all, Elizabeth said. We don't want any of it. Riley slid a folder across the table. There's one thing you should see. Sarah Watkins testified. She brought Amy's early journals, the ones showing premeditation going back to childhood. But she also brought this. Elizabeth opened the folder to find a photograph. Two young girls, maybe 7 and 5, smiling at a beach. Before the trauma, before the murders, before the performance. Just two sisters, happy and innocent. Sarah wanted you to have it, Riley said. Leah. To remember that even monsters were children once. That evil is made, not born. Why would I want to remember that? Because your daughter needs to know it. That despite having James's DNA, despite almost falling under Madison's influence, she has choices. Nature isn't destiny. Elizabeth studied the photo, seeing hints of Madison in young Amy's face, but also something else: vulnerability, hope, humanity. All things Madison had murdered in herself long before she'd killed anyone else. There's more news, Riley continued. The 8th victim Madison mentioned. We found her, buried in the Hamptons' house backyard. Rebecca Morrison, missing since 2019. Her family finally has closure. Elizabeth thought of her former home, now a crime scene, the manicured lawn hiding bones. How many times had she walked over that spot, never knowing? What happens to the house? It'll be demolished. The land will be sold, proceeds going to a victim's fund. Judge Stone is overseeing it, making sure the money goes to programs helping women escape abusive relationships. There was poetry in that. The house where Elizabeth's marriage had died, becoming funds for new beginnings. One last thing, Riley said, pulling out a small package. This came to the FBI, addressed to you. We had to open it, check for dangers, but it's clear. Inside was a Hermes bag, not a Birkin, but a simple canvas garden party tote. The kind of bag that cost hundreds, not hundreds of thousands. Inside was a note from Judge Patricia Stone. Every woman deserves something authentic. This one has no history except what you give it. Use it for your new beginning. P. Elizabeth ran her fingers over the canvas, feeling the quality that came from honest craftsmanship rather than artificial inflation. It was perfect, expensive enough to be special, simple enough to be real. That afternoon, she picked Emma up from school in their used Honda, the Hermes bag holding groceries from the local market. Emma didn't comment on it, understanding intuitively that some gifts transcended their original context. I got into read. Holding up an acceptance letter, early admission for their journalism program. Journalism. Investigative journalism. I want to tell stories that matter, expose truth, help people who can't help themselves, like Riley helped us. Elizabeth felt pride swell in her chest. Her daughter had taken their nightmare and transformed it into purpose. There's something else, Emma said. The school newspaper wants me to write about our experience. Not the sensational stuff, but about deepfakes, about digital identity, about how social media can be weaponized. Would that be okay? Elizabeth thought about their carefully constructed new identities, the safety of anonymity. Then she thought about the 21 victims who'd never gotten to tell their stories, about the women still vulnerable to the next Madison Blake. Write it, she said. Use pseudonyms, change details, but write it. Truth needs to be told, even if we have to tell it slant. Emma hugged her, and Elizabeth felt something she hadn't experienced in years: genuine happiness, untainted by performance or expectation. That evening, they cooked dinner together in their small kitchen, music playing from a vintage radio rather than a digital device. No phones at the table, no documentation, no audience. Just a mother and daughter sharing a meal and conversation. Do you miss anything? Emma asked. From before? Elizabeth considered. I miss feeling safe. I miss not looking over my shoulder. But I don't miss the life itself. It was all veneer, no substance. Like Madison's bags, Emma said. Beautiful outside, empty inside. No, Elizabeth corrected. Madison's bags were full of pain, of theft, of death. Our life was empty. There's a difference between emptiness and evil. A knock at the door interrupted them. Elizabeth tensed. They never had unexpected visitors. She looked through the peephole to see Marcus Reed, older and grayer, but holding flowers. "I'm sorry," he said when she opened the door. "Riley gave me your address. I won't stay. I just wanted to give you these and tell you something." Elizabeth accepted the flowers. Wildflowers, nothing cultivated or arranged. "Sarah Watkins died yesterday," Marcus said. "Suicide. She left a note saying she couldn't live with the knowledge of what Amy became, what she'd failed to stop. She wanted you to know it wasn't your fault, any of it, that some people are just broken beyond repair." Elizabeth felt sorrow but not surprise. Sarah had carried an impossible burden, surviving her sister's evil, witnessing her transformation, being disbelieved and institutionalized. Some weights were too heavy to bear indefinitely. "She also left you this." Marcus handed her a small key. "Safety deposit box in New York. She said it contains Amy's last secret, the one even Madison didn't know about. She wanted you to decide what to do with it." After Marcus left, Elizabeth and Emma sat with the key between them like a question mark. "We could just throw it away," Emma suggested. "Never know what's in the box." "We could," Elizabeth agreed, "but secrets have a way of surfacing. Better to know what we're dealing with." They flew to New York under their fake names, taking a red-eye that put them in Manhattan as the sun rose. The bank was one Elizabeth had never heard of, small and discreet, the kind that valued privacy over publicity. The safety deposit box was small, containing only a USB drive and a birth certificate. But the birth certificate made Elizabeth's blood run cold. Madison Blake hadn't been a stolen identity, it had been a legal name change. Amy Watkins had legally become Madison Blake in 2015, but the birth certificate showed why. Amy Watkins had given birth to a daughter in 2014. Father unknown. The child had been given up for adoption immediately, records sealed. Emma gasped. "Madison had a baby?" Elizabeth plugged the USB into her phone, finding a single video file. Madison, years younger, holding an infant. "I'm sorry," Madison was saying to the baby. "I'm sorry I can't love you. I'm sorry I can't feel what mothers are supposed to feel. You're better off without me. Better off never knowing what I am, what I'll become. This is the only kind thing I'll ever do, letting you go before I destroy you too." The video ended. Elizabeth and Emma sat in stunned silence in the bank's private viewing room. "There's another Madison out there," Emma said quietly. "Another girl with her DNA, probably living a normal life, never knowing her biological mother was a serial killer." Elizabeth thought about nature versus nurture, about the child in the photograph Riley had shown her, about her own daughter who'd almost been seduced by the evil but chose good. "She's not another Madison," Elizabeth said firmly. "She's whoever her adoptive parents raised her to be. She's the love they gave her, the values they taught her. DNA isn't destiny." They destroyed the USB and the birth certificate, choosing to protect an innocent child from a truth that would only hurt. Some secrets deserve to stay buried. On the flight back to Portland, Emma worked on her article while Elizabeth read a book, an actual paper book, no screens, no documentation. Below them, America spread out in geometric patterns, each light a life being lived, each with its own performances and truths. "Mom," Emma said suddenly, "I think I understand now." "Understand what?" "Why Madison targeted you. It wasn't about dad or money or even jealousy. You represented something she could never have, the ability to be yourself even when playing a role. You were a Hampton's wife, but you were still you underneath. She was nothing underneath, just layers of other people. You were her opposite, performance with personhood. She was performance without a person." Elizabeth took her daughter's hand. "You're going to be a brilliant journalist." "I'm going to try to be an honest one. That seems more important than being brilliant." As Portland came into view, Elizabeth felt something she hadn't experienced since before James, before Madison, before the performance began. Possibility. Not the possibility of wealth or status, but the possibility of authentic existence. Their small apartment waited. Their small lives waited, but they were real lives, built on truth rather than fabrication. The Hermes bag from Judge Stone sat in Elizabeth's closet, used for groceries and library books, accumulating its own honest history. That night, Elizabeth stood at her window again, watching Portland sleep. Somewhere out there, a child who would never know Madison Blake as her mother was sleeping peacefully. Somewhere, the families of 21 victims were finding closure. Somewhere, other women trapped in performances they'd never auditioned for were planning their escapes. Her phone, her new phone with its new number, buzzed with a text from Judge Patricia Stone. Saw Emma's article draft. She'll change the world with words. Like mother, like daughter. Authentic to the core. Elizabeth smiled, thinking of her mother in that counterfeit handbag factory, fingers bleeding but spirit intact. She'd wanted Elizabeth to marry up, to escape their circumstances. But what she'd really given her daughter was something more valuable. The knowledge of what was real beneath the surface, the ability to recognize authenticity, even in a world of fakes. Emma emerged from her room, laptop in hand. I finished it, the article. Want to read it? Elizabeth read her daughter's words, seeing their story transformed into something larger. A cautionary tale about digital identity, about the performance of modern life, about the price of authenticity in an artificial world. It was brilliant, but more importantly, it was true. Submit it, Elizabeth said. Emma hit send, her words flying into the digital ether where they'd live forever, not as performance, but as testimony, not as content, but as truth. They made tea and sat together, no phones, no documentation, just presence. Outside, Portland hummed with its own quiet life. Inside, two survivors of the Birkin murders built their new existence, one honest moment at a time. You know what's funny? Emma said. Madison was right about one thing. Everyone does need a brand now, but she never understood that the best brand is just being genuinely yourself. Elizabeth raised her teacup in a toast. To being ourselves, whoever that turns out to be. They clinked cups as the city settled into sleep around them. Two authentic lives hidden in plain sight, finally free from the performance that had nearly destroyed them. The Birkin betrayal was over. Their real story was just beginning. In the end, Madison Blake had been right about one thing. Some treasures did deserve a new beginning. She just never understood that the real treasures weren't bags or belongings, but the bonds that survive betrayal, the love that outlasts loss, and the truth that endures despite every attempt to fake it. Elizabeth Carter was gone, replaced by Grace, a barista with a mysterious past. Emma Carter was gone, replaced by Sarah, a student journalist with unusual insight into digital deception. But mother and daughter remained, stronger for their scars, authentic in their artifice, real in a way Madison Blake could never be. The Hermes bag sat in the closet, gathering dust and grocery receipts and library cards. The detritus of a genuine life. It would never be worth $500,000, never be photographed for Instagram, never be a trophy. It was something better. It was theirs. It was real. 2 years later, Elizabeth runs a small coffee shop in Portland. Her daughter Emma, now a young journalist, uncovers the truth behind the Birkin murders, giving voices back to 21 stolen lives. A Pulitzer Prize nomination. A return to New York. No more masks. No more hiding. On the red carpet, mother and daughter walk under their real names. Emma's speech thunders. Madison Blake stole stories. I tell them back. This prize belongs to the women she silenced. For the first time, Elizabeth doesn't perform strength. She simply is strong because authenticity isn't about the bag. It's about living without fear, scars and all. And in a world built on performance, they choose to live real.